My name is Kimberly Jones, and this is my media clip final for assessment in special education. We're going to start by defining the least restrictive environment and discussing it as a concept that relates to the models of delivery for special services. So, the least restrictive environment is the environment that a student is going to be working in that best allows for them to be able to do work. So it can be full inclusion in the general education classroom. It can be push in and pull out, where a special services provider will come into the classroom and do the services for the child in the classroom. Or if that's not appropriate for that student, the special services provider will pull the child out of the classroom to do the services. You can also have a student who needs to do all of their schooling in a resource room or a separate space than the general education classroom. Sometimes you might have a student that is not doing a traditional educational track at all. They may be doing more of life skills learning. And so those are the environments that are possible, and where special services are given to students. And so the environment is determined by the individual student and what they are able to handle when receiving their services. It might not be conducive for a student to just be in the general education classroom, just like a student that um, may not do their best in a resource room environment. It just depends on the individual student. So we put them in the least restrictive environment for the individual student. The next one is, why is the assessment process described as a cycle, and what are the components of the special education cycle? So it's really simple why it's a cycle, because it's continuous. So a teacher recognizes that a student might have some needs and they refer them to services. They get into services through having that student assessed, and then once a plan is in place, um, you begin monitoring the student for progress, and then annually you revisit and see the progress that the student has made, and then you kind of start that process over again. You change what their goals are, you monitor what their goals are, you assess if they are meeting those goals, and then you start over and you create goals for them, you monitor their progress through the goals, and so on in a cycle. And the components are identification and referral, determination of eligibility, program planning, program implementation, and monitoring. And I'm going to go into depth a little bit further on those on this next page here. So I said what the components are. If a student is suspected of having a need or a disability, they are identified through many means. A lot of the times, teachers, just through general education activities, can see that a student has a need, but you can also see it through how they're doing on assessments, how they're doing on general work that they're turning in, through different groups of people who have contact with that child, and so on. And then uh, somebody can refer the student for special services, and then they go through the pre-referral process where the teacher is implementing special aids for a student to see where they are and if they're able to make progress in those areas by giving them some extra help. And then if that doesn't work, the student is referred for special services. So to through the referral to special services process, um, the teacher tells special services what's going on with the child, and what we've done to try to help the child with that area. And then parents are let know that the child could use testing, and the parents have to agree to allow that to happen. And then the child is assessed through like federal assessments, like that the federal government allows as ways to assess these students. And so if they're eligible through those assessments, they'll get an IEP, and that's an individual education program or plan, and it is based on the laws and the levels of education and function of the student. And it will state the services that the student needs to receive, how, where, when they'll receive them, and then it has to track their progress, and then when it's reviewed annually or triannually, they'll see the growth that's made and then decide if the student needs to stay on the current goals that they have and keep working on them, if there needs to be a change to the goals, or if they have mastered the skills that they were struggling with and they no longer need an IEP. So those are the components of the special education process. 5 strategies a professional can use to encourage family participation in the special education process. Parent participation in every student is important, but especially with special education students, because it's necessary that they agree to what is happening to their child and that they understand what's happening, and the parent knows the child the best in most cases, so they can have a lot of positive insight into how to the best way to move forward with their child. So the 5 strategies that I looked into were communication, commitment, equality, trust, and respect. So obviously communication is really important in many, many areas, but especially between parent and student. And teachers need to make sure that they are clear in their statements. They connect with parents often. They're honest and thoughtful and positive, and never like demeaning or blaming or angry. And just having that communication line open makes a world of difference to knowing what that student needs. And then commitment. So it's a commitment to helping parents understand the process of their students' education, and using language that's easily understandable and relatable, and making sure that they're comfortable in asking any questions that they have in the process, and having a commitment to those needs and making parents feel as comfortable as possible puts you on the parent's side, and that's going to make them more willing to work with you overall. Same with equality. When you're treating the family as an equal, important person in their students' education, that's going to make them feel like you're their ally. And again, making sure that they understand what is lying ahead for the process is going to be helpful. Having trust through being reliable, dependable, honest, sensitive, following through, and talking with facts instead of feelings are all really good ways to increase trust. And having respect for family is a great strategy also. Make sure that your statements are free from bias and discrimination, that you're not intrusive on their family values, and that you're constantly encouraging positive partnerships, are all really excellent ways to encourage family participation. Okay, the last one is to compare and contrast 3 types of derived scores: percentile ranks, standard scores, and stainings, and then how they're related to one another and to the normal distribution. I feel like this is kind of complicated, and so I wrote it down as simply as I could figure out how to. So I have a little sketch in the center where it's showing the normal distribution, and that is the bell curved line. And then the standard scores are the pink dashed lines and straight lines in the middle, and they are an average range, and same with the percentile ranks. They show an average range, and then stainings are 9 segments where scores are distributed over the normal distribution curve. So a percentile rank, a standard score, and a staining are all on the normal distribution curve. So that's how they're similar. Standard scores are comparisons of scores from different sources, and it's the average score the test taker gets. Percentile ranking is how well a student performed compared to students in a certain group of norms. And a staining is the range of scores that come from a national norm sample. So where the norms come from are one of the things that makes them different from each other. And then the normal distribution is, the lower scores are on one tail, and then the averages are in the center on the hump of the bell, and then the high scores are over on the other side.